Alright everybody, on today's video, we're going to turn a couple of these timbers into our first wall and get it raised up. Make sure you stay to the end so you can see how I managed to turn even this into a welding project. Okay, so on our last episode we converted our deck into a foundation using some simple methods, ordered our concrete and got it delivered. First we're going to have to smooth out the top of this foundation for the deck, and we're going to assemble our deck and get down our base flooring. Here my dog Maybe's testing the base flooring for us. Now that the subfloor is approved, we can move on to getting the beams in position, start working on our beams. Now these beams are heavy. It's really important to work with these beams and not against them. So if you don't have a bunch of people to move these beams, you're going to want a lot of wheeled devices, a dolly, and don't overdo it. Move one end at a time and put the pivot point for these beams in the middle. This beam is about 300 pounds. I can barely move it myself. But if you put the pivot point in the middle, I can actually move this beam with 2 fingers. I move it wherever I want. So now I just need to move the pivot point and go down to that end.
I want you to work smarter, not harder, lad.
We got our platform done, we got our beams. Now all we gotta do is trim these beams into a kit and keep this place dry. You can see this is bolted this to the house to keep me dry, and the water is just pouring off it. So it's a good thing I did this. Alright, now that we got our beams moved up to the site, it's time to start processing them. We got to cut the ends and make sure it's really square, because these ends are actually going to sit down on the subfloor and set the squareness of the building. So I got a brand new Ryoba saw from my local woodworking shop, which is actually, lucky for me, is Shelter Institute, which is a really good post and beam construction school, and they even have a YouTube channel on here, so make sure you check them out. The link will be in the description. I also went ahead and got my bolts at my local industrial supply place. I use Bath Industrial. Now that we got all of our parts ready, it's time to start cutting this into a kit. Since this is my first post and beam structure, I decided to go with a standard post and beam instead of a timber frame, which is a lot simpler. It's the bolt together method, and I knew it was something I could conquer, where I don't think I was ready to tackle a timber frame right off the bat. So as you can see, this has just involved a lot of square cuts, some notches taken off of the ends which will fit into each other, and then we'll bolt together those notches once we assemble it.
Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down! Once upon a time there was a big crane man, and everybody knew he had a wood brain, yeah. Oh yeah, he's got wood.
Salt water will warp the wood, so keep your tears in your eyes where they belong.
So this was probably the hardest part of the project. And this was a notch in the middle of the beam. So to do this, I had to make a bunch of cuts and then break the chunks out and then smooth out the notch with a chisel. So I've never been very good with the chisel, so I wanted to start off with a nice and sharp chisel and then take it real slowly, and it actually worked out pretty well considering. Clean up the corners of the notch with the chisel and flatten out the bottom of it. And test fit it. And it actually turned out perfectly square, dead on. It's a very tight fit. And you can see it's almost exactly square. It's amazingly square. So we'll make sure to level the entire structure. And then we'll drill our bolt holes using a jig, which keeps the drill bit straight. And with that pilot hole drilled, we can countersink the drill holes for the head of the bolt. And use a long arbor bit. I believe this is a 7/8 diameter, 6-inch long arbor bit to go through the beams. Chisel out the hex head so the hex head can sink in, because this is going to go flat against a wall. And then I started getting paranoid about these hex heads pulling through the log, so I actually went ahead and cut a small plate, sunk that down into the wood, and I'm actually going to go ahead and weld this plate to the bolts, and now there's no way these bolts can pull through. And you know the expression, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, as a welder, obviously I was itching to weld this structure together, so here we go.
The fire's shooting at us!
So this is actually called a bumper lift, and I bought it to lift my cars, and I realized this is exactly what I need to lift this wall. And I did realize once I would lift this wall, it was going to fall right in the middle of these two windows. So to make this wall fit, I'm actually going to have to slide one window sideways 4 inches, and the other one, we're going to get a slightly narrower window, and that'll make room for the wall. Alright, now it's time to lift the wall. This is a pneumatic jack, so we had to run an air hose through the house for my compressor in the shop. And then this bumper jack lifts up about 3 feet at a time. So after we would lift up for 3 feet, then we'd have to screw everything in place and lock it up with boards and blocks, and then reset it and use a spacer to lift the beam up again.
So that's the way it's done.
Alright everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you like the video. Subscribe if you're not already. Check out some of these other videos like the playlist on this project. And I'll catch you next time.